Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 67th Annual Grammy Awards and how, in my personal opinion, I think it was the best Grammy Awards ceremony of this millennium. That's a really bold statement for me to say, but after all the years of snubs and politics and the Grammys, I feel like this is the first time in a long time that I feel like not only did the voters get it right, but the performances got it right, the moments got it right, and we as a whole, I feel like we've never been more united as a community. Whether you're a music critic or just a music lover, it felt like regardless of who you were rooting for tonight, there was a sense of community and a sense of standing up for the bigger picture, which I feel like that was the whole energy this ceremony gave that made it different than the rest. Now, let's do a little bit of a recap of the winners, the performances, the big moments, and any potential snubs. Let's talk about Sabrina Carpenter. Sabrina Carpenter was nominated for 6 and won 2 Grammys, including Best Pop Vocal Performance and Best Pop Vocal Album. Now, it wasn't too much of a shock that she won for Espresso, though I was definitely also pulling for Bodyguard by Beyonce, since that was my favorite song from Cowboy Carter. What I was pleasantly surprised is her winning for the album, when I was so sure it was going to go to Billie Eilish or Chappell Roan. All 3 of those albums were amazing, but I can't complain, as Short and Sweet was my most played album of 2024. Some categories that were no shock wins were SZA for Best R&B Song with Saturn, no surprise, and Charli XCX taking 3 Grammys, including for Best Dance and Electronica Album and Best Dance Recording with Von Dutch. I feel like if Charli XCX didn't win any of these categories, it would be the biggest snub of all time. But some of my favorite wins of this ceremony weren't just who won them, but the speeches that came with them. Personally, my favorite that made me teary-eyed was seeing Doechii take Best Rap Album, which I was pulling for, and I was so glad that she won. Her speech moved me in a way that brought me to tears, and it was a reminder to never count yourself out. I was also really happy and not surprised at all that Chappell Roan took Best New Artist, but what took me by pleasant surprise is her using her entire acceptance speech to advocate for healthcare for all the recording artists that are signed to labels. This speech shed a light that, though we already know record labels are pretty scummy, but to the extent we were never known of what goes beyond closed doors, I was shocked to hear that artists aren't provided health insurance. That's insane. And I'm glad Chappell spoke on that, and I'm glad that it resonated with all the artists in the room that night. But my personal favorite acceptance speech moment comes to Shakira when she accepted her Best Latin Album award, where she dedicated that award and her acceptance speech to the immigrants that are dealing with the immigration laws in America, expressing her love for her Latin community, which I feel, given the times that we're in, was very necessary to address. And before I forget, the most obvious Grammy bait song, Die With a Smile, of course, won for Best Pop Duo Performance. And I was rooting for it, but it was the most Grammy-baited song out of all of the main categories that were at the awards night. But let's talk about the big winners of the night, which were Queen Bee, Beyonce, and Kendrick Lamar, both making history. Beyonce won Best Country Album and generated the first meme of 2025, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations, Bee did it. She finally did it. And this is a big deal considering she wasn't even nominated for any country music awards for the CMAs. Her and Miley also took a Best Country Duo song with Two Most Wanted, which I think was well deserved and made me really happy to see them win the Grammy together. But the most important win for Beyonce was, of course, the long-awaited Album of the Year. Now, Out of all the projects that Beyonce's been nominated for Album of the Year, I think Cowboy Carter is my least favorite. But the sentiment I still respect and still think it was a well-deserved win, given the snubs from Lemonade and Renaissance especially. Personally, I think she deserved it more for Lemonade and Renaissance, but I'm happy that she finally got that win with such a transformative, genre-bending album. It's kind of like a retcon, though I would have been really happy to see Billie Eilish take this award or Charli XCX, as I think those two albums I personally thought were stronger than Cowboy Carter, but I'm not complaining because Beyonce is Beyonce and she deserved at least one Album of the Year. But the biggest winner of the night, of course, was King Kendrick Lamar, making history for winning 5 Grammys for Not Like Us, which every time he won another Grammy for Not Like Us, I laughed even harder than the previous time. This is the most awarded rap song of all time. This is the first ever diss song to win a Grammy Award. And he did his acceptance with his Canadian tuxedo. If I were Drake, I would move to a different continent, change my name, and restart my life, because how freaking embarrassing must it be to lose so badly and the victory lap is still not over. We'll tune back in after the Super Bowl halftime show happens. Now, let's talk about the performances. As usually for the Grammys, artists pick their slow, boring, non-single ballads off the albums to perform. But this year was a little bit different, and some of the highlights are Sabrina Carpenter's performance, which definitely gave like a homage to early Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera kind of like antics of her performance. That was kind of giving that retro vibe that they did in their early years of their career. Chappell Roan with her Pink Pony Club was iconic. Doechii with her sitting splits while she was rapping was crazy. And I thought it was really cool that all the other Best New Artist nominees did like a little medley of some of their big hits. My personal favorite of those performances was Ray, who I was a little disappointed didn't win Best New Artist, but I know she's gonna have some big wins in the future. Overall, all the performances were very high up energy and interesting, which isn't always the case for Grammys. But the biggest shocking performance was the fact that The Weeknd performed after he's avidly been boycotting the Grammys. But what was even more shocking is that the Grammy CEO acknowledged this controversy of The Weeknd calling out the Grammys for their snubs, and not only acknowledging that, but showing how they have made progression to make the Grammys more inclusive and more progressive in their voting system, so that way situations like that don't happen. I thought that was really cool that they actually took accountability and showed progressive action, thus giving the platform of The Weeknd to be able to perform again and show that he sees that they have changed their ways. Now the question is, do I think that there were any snubs or people that won that shouldn't have? The only big snub that I feel, not necessarily that they should have won it more than someone else, but I was a little surprised that Billie Eilish came home with nothing. I think Hit Me Hard and Soft deserved at least one type of Grammy for something. But maybe if she would have nominated a different song for the song categories instead of Birds with a Feather, she might have stood a higher chance. I feel like songs like The Greatest or even Wildflower were more standouts of Grammy awarding songs than Birds of a Feather. But that's just my opinion, mainly because Wildflower is one of my all-time favorite songs of 2024. But that's beside the point. And personally, I don't think Chris Brown deserved Best R&B Album. I don't think Chris Brown has put out a good song in over a decade. So the fact that he won a Grammy for an album felt off, felt weird. But besides those little tidbits of maybe some snubs or disagreements for certain awards, overall, I think the reason why this Grammy Awards got it right is because the music this year was just so good that even if who you were pulling for didn't win, you were still happy with who did because you can acknowledge it was a good body of art. And that's what I'm excited about in the music industry, is to keep pushing good work instead of the industry pushed marketable albums. Instead, let's focus on the art again. Let's focus on the fun again, you know? It just makes me so excited to see us back in an era where pop culture music matters again. I feel like we haven't been in this era since the early 2000s. The 2010s feel kind of like a blur. The late 2000s feel like a kind of blur when it comes to music actually mattering. And it's finally happening again. And it makes me so excited. We're having interesting pop artists. We're having old school pop artists be retro and cool again. And it's just really exciting to see all the different directions that we're going. It feels like we're kind of having a relapse of the late 90s, if that makes sense. So thank you for watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed my little recap of the Grammys. Make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Tell me, what were your thoughts on the Grammys? Who you think should have won? What was the biggest moments? The snubs? And most of all, what artists are you looking forward to dropping their next project? Me personally, I'm most excited to see either Doechii and Ray put out a new album, because I'm just excited with what direction they're going to go next. But I want to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments. Stay tuned. Bye.